All right, welcome into the BFR Podcast presented by Sports Mockery. A little bit different. If you're looking at on YouTube right now, we have Nick Whalen of the Bear With Us podcast, also a writer over there at Football Guys. I have my good friend, co-host Ficky. Follow him out on socials at It's Ficky Baby. And then, of course, me, Dave. Follow me on all socials at Dave_BFR. And then we have our producer, Jack, here. Jack, what is your Twitter? I don't want to have it memorized.
My Twitter is not my real name. It's JAC. And then my last name is Scroggs, SCROGGS.
Awesome. Well, first of all, Jack's going to stay on here. We have Robert Schmitz of Dub Bears blog. He's going to be hopping on here in a little bit. He's buying a car, I heard, or something like that, right, Ficky?
Yeah.
But he's going to be here. He's going to be here in a moment. We're going to talk some football. But before we do, Ficky, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Everything's been good.
Okay.
Twitter's been fantastic. No toxicity of any sort on Bears Twitter. So that I've ever seen before. So everything is going great.
Okay. We'll get to that in a minute. And then Nick, man, first of all, thank you for taking the time to hop in here with us. We know everyone's busy talking about a lot of things, but how are you doing? How's the offseason treating you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good. Right now, I like to go super in depth. So I'm like looking at free agents. I'm looking at the depth of the draft and trying to figure out how they can get a whole team together. And I'm excited, man. Like, I know people get angry on Twitter, but like the Bears are in a good spot. So it's all gravy for me.
Awesome. Yeah, it is. I like, that's one thing I wanted to bring you both on for, is because you do go, it's a perfect word. You go more in depth. It's not really emotional. We talked about it off air about how you guys really just look at this thing from a, facts. Here's what we think. This is what, traits, everything like that when it comes to just not the quarterback position, but free agents. And then of course the other draft prospects, because the Bears not only have the first pick, but also the 9th pick right now currently. So a lot to talk about. And then, like I said, Rob will be joining us here in a short, but Jack, I'm going to put you on the spot here. You've been with us for a little bit now. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of people know, first of all, where you stand with the quarterback situation. So as Nick said, we got to get everyone on record here. So what are your thoughts, man, before we get Rob in here?
My thoughts are pretty simple. If you look right behind your left shoulder, those are my thoughts right there. I am all in. I'm on Fields' train. It's Fields till I die. He's my guy. And so, I'm a big Justin guy. I don't fully believe in Caleb yet, and that's like I don't know, it seems like an outdated excuse, but I prefer to keep Justin. With that being said, people are talking about the Patriots possibly trading the 3 to us, and we give them our 9 and then a second rounder and then Justin. That I would I don't know if I would find room to complain there if we can end up with Caleb, Marvin, and then the rest of the offense as well. So but my official stance, as of today, JF1 till I die.
Yeah, I got to follow
stick
up
with that.
Yeah, I got to follow up. So since you're willing to take Fields at 3 or ship him off for a 3rd, what about the reports came out? I think Adam Schefter on Pat McAfee's show was talking about how Mike Tomlin loves Fields, right? So what happens, and this is probably, I think, more likely or plausible, is that they trade the 20th because they're too far back in the teens, right, to trade up to get anything in the top 5. We trade them Fields for a 1st rounder, and we probably have to send a 4th with, or maybe like a 5th, right? Mm-hmm. So it's we get their 1st round pick 20, they get Fields in a 5th. Would you do that?
I don't know.
We'd have 1, 9, and 20.
I don't know enough about the bottom half of that 1st round. Like, you know what I mean? Like the prospects, like below 10. I don't know much about them because that's not where my focus is. Like I'm focused on 1 and 9. And then like, that's what I'm looking at. I did see today that the DraftKings odds, not that it means everything in the world, but the Steelers were plus 600 to land the 1. And then now they moved up to plus 120, which is nearly the same odds from the Panthers trade last year. So that was interesting to think about, but like I said, I have no comment on that question at that time. I have no clue.
No comment.
If there's somebody down there, you guys would know much more than I would on if there's someone down there that we could, potentially land and help us out as much as a Caleb Marvin thing would.
So I want to ask you, Nick, as far as say we do get a pick here, however we get there, whether it's trading back from 9 or even there was reports about Pittsburgh being interested, potentially sending that pick. What is it? 20? Is that what you guys are talking about?
Yeah.
Right.
20.
What would you think? Well, who would be your target there? Say you get your quarterback, you get your receiver. Where are you going in that 20 to 30 range?
Yeah, there's a lot of prospects there that I like. I am actually a little in the mold of let's really build around the quarterback. I think you could almost go double receiver because you're going to have starters
Yeah.
out there. There's like Brian Thomas, who's a big 6'4" receiver from LSU. He would be there. If you like the fast guy, Troy Franklin would be there. You could go your D end. The D ends I think are slipping. So the top three are Lau Latu from UCLA. He's got some medicals. He's not as long or as athletic as the other two, but he's the best, I think, refined pass rusher of the three. Jared Verse is more of your Montez Sweat, like a big guy that's more run stuffing. He can still get after the quarterback. And then Dallas Turner is kind of more of like your athletic freak that's more of a pass rusher. I think one of those could fall there. Or you could just make all the Bears Nation happy, Dave, and get JPJ.
That's what I was thinking, Jackson Powers.
Yeah, and who is like, I mean, it's actually an interesting story. He was like a backup and filled in at guard for 2 years. Then this year, like, okay, you can start at center. And then he was an All-American and he crushed at the Senior Bowl, super athletic. He would just fix that spot. So, yeah, there's some good options there.
Yeah, realistically, though, would you use pick 20? I know he's actually, I think he's 2020 or he's 22nd overall in regards to PFF's big board. So would you actually take a center mid-round like that in the first?
I wouldn't, because I'm so position valued, and I see so many really good free agent centers that are out there too. I mean, that's something that we all should discuss. I mean, there's the positions the Bears need. There are some good ones in the draft and there's some good ones in free agency. So really it's going to be what's the best value and what you can get for $1 or a draft pick. I would hold out and only spend a first round pick on a corner, a tackle, a receiver, or a quarterback and a D end. That's literally all I would spend a first. You could twist my arm into a pass rushing 3 tech, but that's it.
Okay. Yeah, there are some interesting centers, but before we get into all this, I guess, Rob, you finished buying your car. Is that right? That's what we heard, right?
That's right. This time it's childcare. The moment we bumped from 6:30 to 7, my wife was like, "So you're going to put him down, right?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah." But so are we jumping right in at center? JPJ, I take it?
Kind of. That's what we're talking about. You got any thoughts on it?
What do you think? Well, so look, in my opinion, I think that 20 is probably too high for a center. I mean, what we've seen at least is that Tyler Linderbaum is about as high as you're going to see a center prospect taken. But the good news for Jackson Powers Johnson is that he's a guard. I mean, at this point, he's playing so well in terms of the power that he shows us, the movement that he gets, the displacement ability that you see in his tape, that there's going to be an NFL team that's going to value him at guard that can also play center, which you can never have enough of those guys. Can you? And so, in my opinion, I know this is far-fetched, but the way that the Bears probably get Jackson Powers Johnson is if they do decide to either trade down from 1 with Pittsburgh, which would be a long way down, or they trade Fields and somehow end up netting pick number 20. I think that right around there, if you had that third extra first, I know we're dreaming at that point, but you might just have the capital to pull off a move like JPJ. Other than that, man, I don't know. I kind of think he'd have to fall pretty hard. And at that point, let's start here, because I'm sure you guys already talked about it. Are we signing a free agent veteran center either way? Because you got to do free agency first.
You have to. I'd rather have a starter. So I want a veteran who's going to snap to a rookie quarterback with this team, right? I think that makes more sense. Like if we want to, and then we can still draft a center, but have them play behind. You know what I mean? Get your feet acclimated, things like that. But I don't want rookie center with rookie quarterback. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Well, I'm kind of excited that we're talking about centers to start this show off before we get to, kind of the most over talked about, quarterback situation right now. If you haven't heard, of course, Rob and Nick, but I really want to dive into this, because if they do go free agent in center, there's Connor Williams, Andre Jones, Lloyd Cushenberry, Aaron Brewer, to kind of top 4. Do you guys have any targets here? And I'll start with you, Nick. Who would you target here if you are the Bears and say you are going maybe? Well, it doesn't even matter. Justin, Caleb, you're going to need a center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll give you 2. So I like Connor Williams the most. He has the most risk. He's torn both ACLs. He did one, and again, I'm not going to get the year right. I think it was 2019 in week 12, but then came back and started every game the next year. This last season, he tore it in week 13. So you're like, okay, well, he's done it before. Can he come back? But of the free agent centers, he's the only one that's been a top 5 center in multiple years. The other ones have had like one good year. Another one's been like really mid or worse. So if you're going to spend any kind of money, I'll go after the guy that has at least elite ability, or I'll go Aaron Brewer, who's I think the most athletic, maybe besides Williams, because he was teamed up with our now assistant O-line coach in Tennessee. So he knows him. And then you compare him with a mid-round center like we're talking about. And that way we don't have to worry about that again.
Yeah, I'm absolutely down for a double dip if we're talking about the players that we're looking for, because it's hard to draft a center just because you can either spend high capital on a center. Maybe you get a Creed Humphrey. Maybe you get, who's the kid for the Vikings? Is it Lloyd Cushenberry? But I know that they tried to draft one lately, and now I think he's hitting the market. But I'm right there with you, Nick. That's the name that I settled on, was Aaron Brewer, as a matter of fact, just not only because of the connections that they have to the staff, but also because you're looking for somebody a little better than what we've got, or than what Seattle had in Evan Brown. It's hard to get excited about a center that was part of one of the worst offensive lines in football. And it wasn't as if he was the shining star on that offensive line. They were all pretty tough. But the Bears need a veteran presence at center. And as much as I'd love for them to have a killer, I just don't know if they have the budget this year to sign that killer at free agent center and still also get a killer on the edge and also get a killer on a wide receiver. Like, I think we'd all agree, if the Bears could just have 5 first-round picks and $120 million in cap space, man, this would be a lot easier. But in the wide world of how all the puzzle pieces fit together, part of me wants the Bears to build a 6-man offensive line with a 4-deep interior, if I got to choose, right? Where that 6th offensive lineman is actually like some decent capital gets used to draft that guy. If the Bears do at any point trade back, or they add a 2nd-round pick through whatever trade mechanism they might, I think that a lineman would make a lot of sense. But I really don't know if Poles in this Bears org has the patience for that kind of vision, because that would imply signing a veteran center that you expect to play and then using a early day 2 pick on somebody who you're going to need an injury or a regression before you see them play, which maybe the Bears would want that guy to play immediately. I don't know.
You know, one thing I just thought of that might change, actually, my opinion, maybe go JPJ, is because the top, 3 of the top 4 teams this year, Detroit had an all-pro center. Then you have Linderbaum and Creed Humphrey, like 2 of the best centers in the NFL. So it's like, is that some kind of secret sauce that we're not thinking about? Like, having this elite center really covers up so much for a team, because as we know, Justin Fields had a guy right in his face all the time because of the terrible centers. I think we had about 3 that were terrible over 2 years. So, I mean, maybe that is an important position that's underrated.
Well, also think about it, right? Why I don't want rookie is because at the end of the day, right, we talk about the intellectual standpoint, or like how much information that center has to withhold, like, because he is the quarterback of the line, right? The call outs, the shifts, the adjustments, the things like that. So you have a rookie quarterback coming in who has to do his learning on the fly and has to do this all for the first time in the NFL, with someone who's also having to do it all for the first time in the NFL. And I'm just like, it just doesn't seem like it wouldn't be helping each other be set up for success. At least you talked about it, Rob, like, you know, maybe they don't have the patience. Like, they could be great together, but how fast are we trying to get there? Because this team isn't dog shit, right? We weren't the worst team in the NFL. We are trending up. So you don't want to put something in place to where you start to regress tremendously, because you're going to lose the fan base and all that stuff. And, you know, you got to start winning games at some point. So I wouldn't be mad about the double dip. I think the trenches is how you win in the NFL. You look at all the best teams in the playoffs right now, other than I take out the Chiefs, but even they have a great defensive line. But if you take out Patrick Mahomes, all the other teams, right, that don't have Patrick Mahomes, like, the trenches is where it's at. So if we need a double dip on either side, I'm totally fine with that. Plus, they get injured all the time. Like, they get beat the hell up. Like, so you need to have someone who can come in and move around and things like that. So
it would be really prudent. You can't convince me otherwise, right? It's just a matter of would the Bears be willing to spend a top 50 pick, or maybe let's say top 60 pick, just to keep it easy, on a player that wouldn't start day one. I think that's completely acceptable. I mean, come on. Do we really think that Tevin Jenkins or Nate Davis aren't going to get injured at any point? Do we really want, like you're saying, that rookie pairing? I mean, it's easy to forget. Patrick Mahomes sat for an entire season, and then after an MVP winning second season, told I can't remember. I just remember that the interview happened in a barber shop, that he told us that he didn't really learn how to read defenses until the tail end of his second year. And at least from what we've seen since then, it sure seems like he meant it. So, Ficky, I'm right there with you, asking a rookie, because if we just assume that Pat's not the only one, that all these rookies are learning on the job against grown men that are fighting to feed their families, right? Then you want guys that are going to be able to take the pressure off of whatever rookies the Bears draft. That's the best part about the Bears potentially drafting a receiver. You already have DJ Moore to play that number one role. That's the best part about potentially drafting a lineman. You already should have a starting line in place. And so maybe that helps the quarterback out. Maybe the Bears don't move on at quarterback. Who's going to say? But like you're saying, I think it's just a little too much dynamite potential to line up a rookie center and a rookie quarterback and expect results that aren't explosive in a bad way.
Well,
so here's my question. Oh, go ahead, Nick. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the fun thing this year is after tearing the whole thing down, the whole team, now you can double dip. And because, I mean, you have to have multiple edges with rushing the passer. You have to have multiple receivers and packages and threats. And, you know, a lot of teams now have 3 safeties is like the super popular thing. And our third safety is terrible. Very bad. You know, this is now the time when polls can like start really dealing, be like, hey, you know what? Now I'm going to build depth. Now I'm going to build sub packages, and we're going to have other players instead of, remember, we would just like sign a DB and we're like, we hope they're not terrible, you know, like, and signing receivers and hoping that, you know, Valus can catch a deep ball. Like now it's not going to be as desperate. I feel like now we're going to start building some strength. And like when guys go down, we're not going to be as effective as we were in years past.
And I think that leaves a perfect transition. You talked about like grabbing guys that you can use for packages. Well, we've already seen that with Poles. He literally did that with drafting a nickelback in Kyler Gordon. Like he's not a high pick. He uses them for nickel, like basically specifically. He played some outside early on in his rookie year, but mostly does nickel and the dime packages and things like that. And we had David Kaplan on last week, and he was talking about how like Poles basically sticks to his board. So I feel that if he sees that, you know, he's taking away the positional value, like if he sees, hey, look, JPJ's on the board, looking at my grading system, he's higher than the rest of these people, I'm taking him, right? Which I enjoy. I think that's the smarter way because you get yourself less in trouble. Like just if you build your team with a bunch of great players, sooner or later things just align. You know what I mean? And then if there's holes and things like that, that's what you can do with free agency the following year. So I hope that is the case. And I would not be mad if we start to see double dipping this year. I think they'll almost confirm that he's kind of doing that BPA. Do you guys agree? Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I'm just trying to count to 3 or 4 over here just to make sure I don't jump in at the first sight, right? But yeah. I agree with you, Fick. I mean, we've spent so long as Bears fans, nigh on a decade at this point, where we've been drafting for need all the way through the 4th round in most cases. I mean, let's not forget how often we go, well, yeah, you're just going to have to draft one of those guys. And then we need the rookie to come in and be a superhero. Right. Whereas the way a lot of these good teams stay good is by planning for the future. Draft for what you don't have in 3 years, not what you need in 2024, but what you need in 2025, 2026, 2027. Obviously, that's a heck of a long-term view, and most teams just don't have the patience for it. But what we know right now is that Tevin Jenkins' future is uncertain. What we know right now is that Nate Davis didn't give us enough to bet on anything beyond the last guaranteed year of his contract. What we know right now is that the center position isn't figured out. So adding an extra guy, think like Cody Whitehair when he was originally added, right? He got added as a guard, but he ended up being needed at center, ends up making the Pro Bowl, right? As a center his rookie year. I mean, I can't help but think that adding on the offensive line is going to help whoever the quarterback is. I see it as something that would be really valuable to do. The only thing I would turn back on you and just say, we have seen polls draft for need before. There's no way you can convince me that Velus Jones at number 71 wasn't best wide receiver still on the board. I have nearly no doubt in my mind that
Did I lose Rob? Can you guys hear him?
I think I lost him too.
Yeah, I lost him too.
Rob, you're spitting so much facts.
yeah.
So
There you are.
story short, it muted me for some reason. Long story short, I think that at 71, the Bears said, "Shoot, we really thought
You're on your other mic now, Rob.
Yeah, we can hear you, but you're on the other one.
Yeah.
come on."
You're good,
Yeah, I'll
bro.
just add this in.
That's what
Like
happens
the
when you
other thing
spit
I
that
think,
hot fire.
yeah, the other thing I think that's fun with this is when you can stick with Flus, which I know some people didn't like, and you don't keep changing coaches and changing systems. They have to rotate and get their players in, et cetera. Now you can build that depth. Now you can start building that fun versus like, okay, this isn't Flus's guy, or this doesn't fit Flus's scheme. And then you have to flip from going from a 34 to a 43, or he likes pass rushing ends versus Flus likes run stuffing edges. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's when I think you can build. So that might be part of why polls wanted to keep like with the current path is that you have to keep flipping. We're not like constantly churning over coaches and rosters. You want to build something for the long haul.
Well, I mean,
No,
if you
yeah.
go back- go ahead, Dave.
Oh, no. Go ahead, Vic.
I was gonna say, I mean, if you go back to the most successful years that we've seen, at least in my lifetime, Lovey, that defense was at Tampa 2 for that whole time, right? So it is good to have consistency. I think that is the main reason why I am on board with Flus staying, is because it worked. So let's be consistent and keep it, and then we can improve along the way. Having to this team every 2 years, or even almost every year, there's someone in and out, at least from a coordinator standpoint, where it's like you don't get 2 years of something, and then normally they're out the door because it sucked. The next guy they bring in, 2 years of ass, they're gone. And it's just like this constant repeat. And it's like you're not giving anybody enough time to either, a lot of them is first time hires, so allowing them to learn on the job. You know, talk about a quarterback coming in, a rookie quarterback, he's learning on the fly. Some of these coaches come in and have to learn on the fly too. Now, if it doesn't work out after a good amount of time, that's totally fine. I get why you'd fire them and let them go. But Flus, at least Flus in year 2, his side of the ball improved tremendously. So I get you may not like him as like the face of the franchise that get up in the podium and give you this great inspiring talk, right? But you know who else wasn't like that? Lovie Smith. Lovie Smith was listening to Lovie talk was like you could put you to sleep. He really could. And I love Lovie, and I think a lot of us love Lovie because he won games and his defense was dominant. So now, if Flus doesn't work out this year, then obviously there might be some questions, but based off at least what he's given recently, there's no reason for me to think like, why would we start the whole thing over? Like we've done that so many times.
I will say this before Rob and Nick, you can maybe jump in on this, but first, I think Lovey was actually kind of funny. Like, if I remember, I thought he had some funny jokes. I really liked Lovey, but I kind of see where you're coming there, Ficky. But secondly, what you said there about if it doesn't work out this year, then we have questions. And that's kind of what everyone was up in arms about Caleb Williams. If they go the rookie quarterback route and then you fire your head coach, it's the same storyline. We've seen this every single since like 10 or something like that, 2012, whatever it is. So for me, that was never. I don't know Rob. How did you feel about Flus? Did we ever get to ask you that yet?
Well, I'll fit it in anyways, because as soon as Ficky started talking about this, I got like on the edge of my seat. If there's one thing that I think we can make the mistake of doing on podcasts and sports talk radio all over the place, we make everything very binary. We make it the way that we want it, and we make it the wrong way. And there is this way in the middle that we don't talk about a lot, which is it's not what I would do, but it's got plenty of decent reasoning, and let's see if it works. And that's keeping Matt Eberflus, right? By all of our understandings, Matt Eberflus had at least a 4-year contract. We pretty much know this. We don't know if it's 5-year, but it's very rare in the NFL to hand out a head coaching contract of 3 years or less. So the expectation that I certainly have is that Matt Eberflus was effectively given the full end of his contract at this stage. Unless we go full Carolina next year, I fully expect Matt Eberflus, worst case scenario, to enter 2025 on the hot seat. I don't think they really want to say, Matt Eberflus, you make the playoffs with a rookie quarterback or we're done here, right? And I can't help but think, Dave, look, like I'm saying, is it the way I would have done this? Well, I want to believe that Ben Johnson's the next Kyle Shanahan, but there have been a lot of Arthur Smiths. There have been a lot of these offensive coordinators that get their shot and things don't really come together. And when they don't, you end up with a disjointed team that has to create change again. But maybe it helps a rookie quarterback that you bring in basically the best offensive coordinator option that the market's going to allow. And so he's going to raise this rookie quarterback if that's the direction the Bears go. And on the other side of the ball, you have a defense that's experienced basically no turnover at all. And so they should be able to keep scores low. Gosh, I feel like I sound like I'm speaking from 2008. But truly, think about all these different college games that Caleb Williams has played in, where if he didn't score 55 points, his team would lose. Whereas in the NFL, he may have to score, in some cases, as few as 21, 24 points, a very average point total to come away with a win against the Vikings, to come away with a win against the Lions. I mean, big teams that one play might just be the difference. And maybe that's the route the Bears think they can go here, right? Where, again, maybe it's not what we would have done. Maybe what we thought was the more exciting option carries more risks than we want to admit. So we'll have to just let Eberflus speak for himself. I'm okay with that at the very least. It's got better reasoning than I originally thought it did. It's just not the reasoning I was coming to. And I'm just a guy on the internet, right?
No,
aren't we all?
More than just a guy, Rob.
No, I'm
gotta
just
give
a guy
yourself
on
more
the
credit.
internet. They're the ones getting paid for this.
Yeah, that's true.
Nick, real quick before we get to the super chat here, what are your thoughts on bringing back Flus?
Honestly, I like it. I think everyone was so gung-ho on you have to get the offensive guy, and that's the only way to be successful. But then you have Buffalo, right, with Sean McDermott, and like they've been okay. And I feel like as Chicago fans, right, we always think about like, okay, you have to get a guy like Ditka. Like that's why we like Dan Campbell, right? Like, okay, this big fiery guy, he talks a lot, whatever.
80 ounces of coffee.
Yeah. Biting kneecaps. Like,
yeah.
But like, I mean, okay, who's successful? John Harbaugh isn't loud, Andy Reid doesn't say much. The Shanahans have never said a whole lot.
Bill Belichick?
I sure as heck don't want the guy from the Eagles who comes off wrong.
Sirianni.
I'd rather have the guy that looks like he's boring than the guy that comes off wrong, right? Which can be interpreted a lot of ways. So to me, I was okay with it because you have this continuing build. But then the also thing the Rob talked about with the length of contracts, we have to shift this to the guys they just hired. Most assistant coaches get 3-year contracts. So if you put that into, okay, we just got quarterbacks, we just got Thomas Brown, we just got Waldron. And if you do this for 3 years, and I mentioned this on our podcast, but like, let's say things go well for once in Chicago and Waldron after 1 or 2 years gets a head coaching gig. Okay. Then you have Thomas Brown, who was a really hot candidate 2 years ago, learns from him and just takes over as OC. It just sounds like there's a succession plan kind of in order. So having that already there, now I'm way more okay with Flus. But before that, it was like, is anyone going to come here? But after you saw who came here, you see the confidence they have with Flus and Poles and everybody.
I think we know why people want to come.
Oh yeah.
Oh no.
If you build it, they'll come, right?
Look, I mean,
I think we know why people want to come here.
it's worth remembering though, man. Like football is a team game across the board. Like
Yeah.
one thing that I think gets so tough about this, and look, I mean, I've been deep in the Twitter trenches talking about this all week long, and it's a couple fans reached out to me and reminded me that Justin Fields is a Bears quarterback. He's not only just the Bears quarterback, but he's a Bears quarterback we have invested a lot of emotional capital into. I mean, he was the guy that was going to save us from the horrible direction the 2020 season looked like it was turning towards. I mean, we all remember that, right? Like, there's a reason Nick's dog is named Fields. There's a reason that we all thought this guy was the guy. And so, while I know, Ficky, that I think a lot of logic is pointing in a very specific direction, I don't want to be coy about how hard this topic is for some people. And that may sound corny to some, but it matters, right? Like the four of us, we're trying to, I don't know, have a conversation about sports, which ultimately is all about talking to people, relating to people, right? And this is just, it's a funky time to be a Bears fan, right? Because you can tell just based on how tense the whole fan base is right now, that what should be exciting and probably will be exciting, whichever direction the Bears go, is turning into a lot of hand wringing and a lot of bad feelings in a lot of people's gut because we're so terrified that the Bears will pick the wrong option, and everybody has a different take on what that wrong option is. You know what I mean?
Okay, I got something here because we talked about this off air a little bit about how like the NFC is a lot easier than the AFC, you know, and it kind of reminds of like how the NBA, the East was easier, right? LeBron had kind of this easy road, and it kind of feels like how it could be for Chicago. But it brings me to another parallel that this really bothers me as a fan of the Bears for a long time. Anytime we get a quarterback, it didn't matter who it was. I mean, I've been on this road for a long time. Cade McNown was a first round pick, trade for Rick Meyer before that, etc. Everyone is so critical and negative that I dare fans of Chicago to be supportive and positive and talking upside of players for a while, because we don't support our quarterbacks. You look at other franchises, they do it. How was it in Green Bay? They're like, well, he's just developing. He'll figure it out, right? It was way more positive than anything Chicago's done. And here's the other part too. I feel like people are just like, well, look at the Chiefs. You have to get a Patrick Mahomes and then you'll be fine. He's one of one, y'all.
Yeah,
one of one. It's like the NBA being like, hey, we have to wait around and get a LeBron James. How many years have we been waiting? Y'all, like, there's one of one. Like, you could get a Durant, you can get a Luka, you can get these guys. They're still not winning the championship by themselves. Like, no matter what we do, okay, we have to build a team around whomever it is, Justin, May, Daniels, Caleb, whatever. And that's what it's going to be like. Like, we have to build a whole thing here. We need to keep this thing positive and not booing the offense. If like Caleb starts, right, his first start, and they go 3 and out, the boos could even come out.
Oh
like,
my gosh. Yeah.
Be positive, y'all. Be positive.
That's,
I
think.
Well, here's the
go
problem. Oh, go ahead.
Oh,
So I was gonna say this because my good friend is a Packers fan, and you're exactly right. He was like, "Yeah, we'll get, we'll see how it goes and whatnot." And they have that positive mindset because the franchise has shown that they can do that previously. Oh, we just lost. Oh, he's back. Okay. For some reason, your camera just disappeared, but
it does that sometimes.
But exactly. But basically is that they don't feel like their ship is sinking in essence. So like everything doesn't freak them out, right? Their ship has been afloat for all this journey while they're out at seas, right? And they've never had any issues come along the way. So there's no reason for that negativity or doubt to creep into their mind, right? They've had good relationship after good relationship after good relationship. So they're not worried about their girl leaving them. You know what I mean? Well, us on the other hand, I'm not saying it's right. Like, I think the negativity is crazy from the jump, but we're kind of like, yeah, I've been cheated on like 9 times. Why would I be surprised that this 10th isn't going to spit on my face and leave with my best friend? You know what I mean? Yep. So I kind of get that standpoint, but I will say one thing. I think Fields was the first quarterback in my lifetime where it's not like the support was crazy like these other teams, but I think that was the most support I saw for a quarterback getting drafted because it was the most talented, at least on paper, to get drafted by the Bears that early, to walk in the building. Like people, I think that's why people were so quick to be like, you're our savior, because that was the best prospect of a quarterback to ever fall in our laps. When also, I think another key part was most of us didn't expect that we were going to get him. It was a pipe dream because we were picking at 20, right? And we jumped all the way up to 11. You know what I mean? So I think we've just been burnt a lot, and people are just not handling it in a very healthy, I'd say, way. We have a lot of PTSD and trauma, and we all need to go to therapy. That's basically what it is.
Not to mention, Ficky, I mean, 365 days is an awfully long time. You multiply it by 3, it's a very long time. But if we all remember Fields' rookie year, I say this lovingly. We got to remember, Fields started and finished 9 games, and he finished with less than 200 passing yards in more of them than he finished with more than 200 passing yards as a rookie. And we just didn't care. I mean, it was Matt Nagy's fault. It was Allen Robinson, who's just a giant quitter's fault. He's a rookie. He's going to get better. Very sane and normal takes that I would probably have again, to be honest with you, because I think NFL rookies get a really, really hard job in the NFL, where they're basically asked to do way too much, way too fast. And I don't think there's any better example, at least for recently, than the Bears just throwing Tyson Bagent in the fire. And come the second week of his UDFA starting career, they were having him call protections. They were having him run audibles. Like, they had him processing the game like a veteran starting quarterback as a second starter rookie. That's just a lot to ask. And no surprise, as he basically continued to start, he lost a little bit of confidence with every waning game, and the Carolina performance was probably one of his worst. Thank goodness he won. I'm getting off track. The point is that the Bears have this opportunity, and this is probably, Ficky, what has me the most excited, Dave, probably you too, that if they do draft Caleb Williams, they can actually ask this kid to just be a part of the offense. They can say, hey, our leaders here, they're going to be Khalil Herbert, they're going to be Darnell Wright, they're going to be Tevin Jenkins, they're going to be DJ Moore. And hey, you talented rookie receiver that Robert hopes gets drafted, you're just a part of this too. Like, if you separate, hey, great, but you're not the number one read on this key 3rd and 8 that we have to have. Hey, 1st and 10, Caleb, you don't have to run the triple option. Like, you don't have to do that. Not here. You're just going to hand it off, and Khalil's going to do the rest in an outside zone rushing attack. Like, the Bears can try to channel Caleb so that he can get these really important game reps without having to carry the weight of the team, which, if you remember what Mitch had to do in 2017, it was him, Kendall Wright, and was Dontrell Inman on that team? I cannot remember. Like,
that was the guy who went to the
Saints. I think
Trey Burton.
Josh Bellamy.
Right, but Trey Burton was the good one. Trey Burton was the guy that we were excited about. Like, the 2017 team was ridiculous. And then the 2020 team that we gave or the 2021 team that we gave Fields, it was probably a little better than the one Mitch had to start with, but it still wasn't good. The hope here is that Caleb Williams can slot into a team that's pretty offensively healthy, or at least as good as the Bears have had in a while, and that he can learn. And by the time he's asked to really carry the weight of this thing, he'll have had enough time that he can have developed rather than being rushed.
Mm-hmm. I agree. We're not as shit as what we normally are.
So before we get to the quarterbacks, I want to get there because I actually have a question for both Nick and Rob. But we have a super chat. Ficky, do you want to go ahead and bring it up?
Yep.
Or Jack?
Oh, whoops. Jack was already on it. I'd be trying to take it from him. Thanks, Jack. If you put it up there for me, I won't touch anything. I promise. Thank you. It's from our boy Tito, $10. Sorry that we're cutting off Nick, your beautiful face, but bear with me for a second. So this from Tito, $10. Appreciate it. He said, y'all hear that polls thinks Caleb Williams is special. Not looking good for JF1. If we get Williams at 1, who's the best wide receiver after Rome, MHJ, and Neighbors? Don't think any of them will be there at 9. Need another weapon. So I'll actually let Nick and Rob answer that. So basically, thank you for the super chat, Tito. Yes, it's not looking good for JF1 at all. Yeah, I think the needle is definitely going down the Caleb route. But let's assume at 9, right? MHJ, Malik Neighbors, Rome Ndunze, all gone. And I think, Nick, you may have mentioned your guy picking at 20 earlier on the show. So maybe I'll ask Rob next, even though he might be occupied. which is fine if that's the case. So we can go to Nick.
No,
Who
I
would
was
you
just
take
passing it.
okay, fair enough. Who would
Yeah.
you take as a wide receiver 4? Like, who's your wide receiver 4 in your draft board? And I'll add another question: would you take it at 9? Or are you waiting?
What
Like,
about
all
tight
three of
end too,
those,
though?
You know,
That's where I'm going to
True.
go, Dave.
About tight end.
I go Brock Bowers because for a couple reasons. We talked about the three teams having good centers that were left out of the top 4. Look at the tight ends: Sam Laporta, George Kittle, Mark Andrews, and Travis Kelce. And the reason I go tight end, even if you have Kmet, because we saw the Patriots do this with 2 tight ends. We saw the Eagles do this with 2 tight ends. When you have a tight end in the game or multiple, the defense doesn't know if it's run or pass. So that helps you out with play action. That helps you hide lots of things. That helps in pass protection. That helps with leak outs, everything. And Bowers is enough different from Kmet. Kmet can be still the blocking and the check down and the short route guy. Bowers is a weapon, y'all. Like, he's really, really good, and he's breaks tackles. Like, I would argue that if we were looking at playmakers, it would be Neighbors and Harrison Jr., which honestly, they're getting very close for me. I don't know who my one is. And then it would be Bowers, and then it would be Odunze. So I like Bowers a ton. I would go with him.
So I need to watch Brian Thomas because I don't know enough about him. By all accounts, he seems like he could absolutely fit here, right? But the main thing I'm focused on is, me personally, I want DJ Moore to stop playing X receiver. He can do it. It's massive testament to our 6-0 hero, right? But I want a bigger ball winner out there on the edge so that we can then get DJ Moore back into the slot where he killed Atlanta. And that's kind of where I want him to live, right? So when I think of big physical ball winner, I keep thinking about Keon Coleman. And most of these draft boards are starting to push Keon down into the second round, where we've seen DK Metcalf get drafted, where we've seen, I think, AJ Brown went into the second round. We've saw George Pickens fall into the second round. Like, we continue to see big outside receivers that their big problem is that they aren't fleet of foot, fall to the second round. And then would you believe it? They're really, really good. Right. And when I look at Keon, at the very least, I see somebody that not only has the ability to block, but he has all of the physicality that you could ask for from an outside receiver. And I just can't get that out of my mind. So I don't know if he's the pick at 9. In fact, I would probably critique Poles for taking him at 9, but you could very easily trade down, or I don't know, takes 2 to tango. You get it. But if you could swing a trade down from 9, maybe you could pick up some sweet draft capital on the side and still nab a guy like Keon Coleman that I think could be really good in Chicago. But it's a little bit of a bigger risk because it's a little less exciting than some of these other guys.
So
Dave,
before you
hop in, I got to call out Nick for his comment. He said Claypool. Question mark. We can't let that
slide.
See, I'm sorry.
See, I was gonna let it
trying not
slide because it's a private chat. It was. I
No,
was like, I
you
can't.
I'm sorry. You can't let that slide. Absolutely.
So for
Absolutely.
those who are
DK Megatron, right? What is it? Only
Okay.
6'3" receivers that are also
Christian Watson. Christian Watson's better than Justin Jefferson. Come on, man. Don't you guys remember?
That's
that?
wild.
Yeah. No. But I want to bring up a really good receiver, potentially a trade, with prospect for this offseason. Brandon Ayuk, 49ers. There's been some turmoil. His family's been on Instagram. They've been very vocal. I think Ayuk even talked about it. Was asked about, the social media presence, about the story that's going around. And he really didn't put the fire out. So for me, I know he's smaller, if I'm not mistaken, 5'11", 6 foot. Is he taller?
Yeah. I think he's 6'2". I'll look it up.
6'2". Anyways, if he's 6'2", wow, that shocks me. But Nick, I want you what would you send value wise? How tall is he?
He's 6 foot. He's 6 foot 200. My bad.
Okay. Well, either way, is that someone you're interested in? Maybe I don't know what it would take. He's an all pro. I mean, he's a very, very good receiver. So would you be willing to maybe trade for him if that was something that was possible? Pair him with DJ Moore.
Yes.
Just like that. I like it.
And I think part of it is because, so there's always this risk, right? I mean, with anyone that you draft, Kevin White comes to mind, right? You talk about the PTSD, Ficky, that you draft a guy and there's always, well, can they be good in the NFL? Are they going to be at that level? Ayuk's already at that level and he's 25, 26. Now you have to pay him. I get that. That's part of the negative, but it's just like the Montez Sweat thing. You know what you're getting. It's not as big of a risk. And there's a lot of receivers, I think, that are out there that fit kind of what, Rob was talking about with like Calvin Ridley, Gabe Davis. I mean, you want to go older, you get like Tyler Boyd, Curtis Samuel, but they're not at the level that you can get Ayuk. And again, I think about these Bears teams, right? Over the years, you had the Jeffrey, Brandon Marshall, Martellus Bennett team. You have the Eric Kramer with Curtis Conway, Jeff Graham, for all my old guys out there that remember those teams like with me, the most passing yards in his season, right, y'all? Okay, I was there for that. They had weapons. And honestly, this is a thing like I've thought about for a long period of time. Think of like the best teams in NFL history, or offenses. 98 Vikings, right? That was Cunningham and Jeff George thrown up to a squad of receivers. You think of the greatest show on turf. Yeah, Kurt Warner's a Hall of Famer, but is he one of the greatest of all time? He's not top 5 for anybody. They had a bunch of weapons. And to me, like, I would pepper either Fields or rookie with so many weapons that they will succeed. I want it to be like San Francisco. And they're like, well, he's just a manager. Good. I dare. That's why I'd said, hey, I'd go receiver at 9 and 20 if I could. I want to get so many weapons and receivers and a good backup tight end and O-line that they help carry and take the pressure off of the quarterback instead of putting pressure on the quarterback.
I'm right there with you, Nick. I think that the more weapons that you can add to this team, the better. The only problem is I do think you have to be smart about your resources. And I mean, call me a big time nerd here, but I'm trying to think about the locker room. And what would be a little weird to me, Nick, is so obviously Brandon Ayuk isn't happy in San Francisco, which is its own question mark, right? Because he just became an all-pro, like he had 1,300 yards. What is there to not like about San Francisco right now? And I guess this is me speculating too much. If I was Brandon Ayuk, I might be tired of all the blocking that they make me do in San Francisco and just being a piece of the pie rather than the entire pie. You come to Chicago, you have to displace DJ Moore. It doesn't get any easier, right? You go from being the 1A, 1B with Debo to the 1A, 1B with DJ, and you probably have to at least consider swapping first rounders like number 9 with number 31 just to at least start this conversation because Sam Fran doesn't want to give him up. And so I love the player. The idea of adding him on the team sounds amazing, but I can't help but think it's just too expensive. And not to mention, on the other side of things, if you do bring in a free agent like Tyler Boyd, that can play number 2 receiver for you in a pinch, but he'll probably be number 3. And then you draft that 1B option, the rookie will come in, and the rookie's not going to have any problem being 1B to DJ Moore. Like, the pecking order makes sense for somebody like Roma Dunze, Malik Neighbors. Truly, who would they be to walk in and assume they were going to take DJ Moore's job? And I call me crazy, that just sounds a little more cohesive to me. But these are professional athletes. I won't pretend to know them.
Well, a couple of things. So one is, okay, let's do that flop with San Francisco. Then at 31, you can get JPJ as your center at 31.
Maybe.
And
I bet he's
makes sense.
I bet he's taken by 31. I really do.
Maybe. And then, but the other part of this too is like, I think he's upset because, I mean, we all watched the Super Bowl. The third down with like 2 minutes left, and Purdy gets it swatted from the blitz. If you look in the middle of the field, Ayuk is wide open. And then the throw in the end zone. Ayuk is open right in the middle of the field. Again, he put a good route on. And he's taken a little time to develop. But to me, I think that could be some of the frustration. He's like, you should have threw it my way more than like 3 times. You know, I know it's selfish, but you want a guy in that big game to want those moments instead of the guy that shies away. That could be part of it. But also, I don't know that they can pay him. They don't got money. So I think either way, he's gone either this offseason or next.
I think it's interesting. There was a funny moment in the Super Bowl when Mahomes, was it Rice or was it McCall Hardman?
It was Rice.
On the sideline
No,
where
it
was it Rice?
Rashid Rice.
Yeah, he was talking to Mahomes on the sideline because I guess Mahomes, you could say he missed him in the open, but I guess it was when his center kind of had a bad snap. And anyways, Mahomes got onto him. He's like, hey, it was a effing bad snap or whatever. And I think it's just interesting. Between the two, Purdy and obviously Mahomes, there's a lot of difference there. But Rob, before, like I said, I do have a question for you, but I wanted to bring up one more thing about free agency. Nick, you had a very interesting tweet. Daniel Hunter obviously is a very popular option that they could sign, that the Bears could perhaps maybe send a big bag to, because it's going to cost a lot of money to sign him. I think Robert, you're kind of in the same stance here, but I wouldn't say you're against it, or are you against it, Nick? And why, or who would you rather maybe the Bears target edge rusher, or do you even want them to maybe go draft at 9 or something like that? So I just want to get both of your guys' like insights. I know a lot of people want to talk about the quarterback, but edge is obviously going to be important too, because we have to get somebody from Montez Sweat, 1 or 2 more people. So what are you thinking about the free agent market?
Well, to me, I think there's a lot of guys. I mean, you look at, Khalil Mack is out there, y'all. We remember him. If you go deep in the trenches, I mean,
I think you look good in a Bears jersey. I really do. I really do.
You did the jersey swap. I think. Dave. I love that, man.
I've been working.
You want to do another one, Dave? Leonard Floyd, our now DC, was his D-line coach just last year. He'd be nice and cheap, and he's again long, which is what this scheme wants. Tyquan Lewis is 29. He'll be cheap. Played for Flus in Indy. He was the 40th best D end. I would rather go that route because when you buy a car, y'all, right? Take it off the lot, depreciates, and it keeps going down. When you sign 29-year-old free agents, 30-year-old free agents, they become Robert Quinn's real quick. They become Akeem Hicks's real quick. And again, we love them, but it doesn't get better. And so AJ Epinesa is a guy that I would like. He's been a kind of a part-time player. He's 25. He's ascending. He played for our now DC. I mean, I know people like Bryce Huff. He's a little shorter and not as long of arms, but there's other guys too. You could go Dorrance Armstrong with Dallas, long. These guys that I think are craving an opportunity, and they're a third of the cost. And then you can go sign your center or a safety, or, and again, maybe a receiver. Maybe you have to go get Calvin Ridley. I don't know, whatever, but I would rather have that than hoping Danielle Hunter stays healthy and doesn't drop off.
I think in a perfect world, of course I want a Chris Jones or a Danielle Hunter or somebody like that. I mean, if the Bears were gearing up, so to speak, to go to war, then that sounds like an awesome signing. And maybe you go Christian Wilkins if you want the extra year because he's just a little bit younger. There seem like there are all these options, but Nick and I have kind of talked about this. Unless you get Jalen Johnson extended, and in that extension, you drop his cap hit, you really only have about $20-30 million to work with. And one of these edge rushers, as expensive as they are, is just going to cost the overwhelming majority of that. Mm-hmm. You don't really have the money to get the veteran center you want, to add a Curtis Samuel, Tyler Boyd, and also get the Danielle Hunter type that I want. But I can't help but think they might try anyways. I mean, this is probably, I think, the area where I feel the boldest, because I imagine that Ryan Poles is truly thinking through the options that he has at number 9, where if Dallas Turner falls to 9, and Roma Dunze is gone, and Malik Neighbors is gone, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is gone, and they don't want Brock Bowers that high, edge rusher's absolutely going to be appealing. Or you could just solve that problem in free agency. Because by all accounts, a guy like T. Higgins is going to go back to Cincinnati. So the wide receiver market is just less interesting than you get at edge, where it's rare to get this kind of talent option right there for just a sign. I mean, this could be a Trent Williams type signing if somehow the Bears made Chris Jones work, though I don't know if that's what they're going to do. All this to say, if the Bears did want to walk into 2024 with a truly complete team, they might find a way to trick the cap out so that they can add a high-priced defensive end. I just don't know if they're that bold right now. I really don't.
It's interesting. I think there's another way you could look at it, Ficky, before I go. You could, if they do end up, I know a lot of reports are kind of trending towards the Bears taking that quarterback, Caleb Williams, Drake May. Obviously, all signs point to Caleb Williams. But if they, for some reason, somehow trade that pick, a lot of these answers, or a lot of the questions, these holes, could be solved with the Hall 2.0, people are calling it, that you could get back with this, which is, I guess that's why a lot of people are probably appealing, or what's really appealing for the people that want Justin Fields to stay, and maybe not even just him as a quarterback, be like, hey, we can kind of build a super team around him. You know, it's been talked about. But Ficky, before I go ahead and get to this question here for Rob and Nick, what do you got for us?
Well, I was gonna say, if we look at history, right, and we follow the data, it looks like Poles isn't very big on overspending. He has a number and he sticks to it. That makes me feel like none of those guys are gonna come to this. Right. Now, it doesn't mean he won't do it at some point, right? I think Rob, you made a good point. Like when you're like, oh, we're in the window, right? Maybe that's the time you start to make those more riskier plays when it comes from a cap standpoint. point, but I don't think we're there yet. I think Poles probably doesn't think we're there yet either, especially since we may have a new quarterback this year, right? So I think those are probably going to be more of a pipe dream than not. I think we're going to probably get more value players. Some of the people that you mentioned, Nick, I can see those as more likely signings because those are going to be cheaper and they could probably still give you a decent value in return from their play compared to let's go big fish hunting. That hasn't been, even from the draft standpoint, that has not been the case for Poles from drafting or free agency. He doesn't make crazy trades that has a lot of risk on us. Like he'll do it the opposite way where he'll trade back and obviously get a haul that Dave just talked about, but I don't see that happening. And then to transition to your next one, Dave, the Ian Rappaport today, and I think Schefter talked about it too earlier this week, was talking about the haul and how it's got to be basically like a tremendous haul. Like you have to be blown away by the haul, right? And so I think Ian Rappaport brought up like that might actually be too big of a requirement for a lot of these teams that it actually turns them off because they just don't have the capital to make such a ginormous trade, right? It's almost like when we keep talking about buying cars, right? You walk into a Lamborghini store, like I look at these price tags and go, look, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. I can't even sell my family to get some of to be able to afford this. So I just think it might be, I think the price tag might be so high that we're actually going to be losing out on some potential like buyers in this situation. But I'll let Nick and Rob give their opinion on where we might be with that haul.
Well, I have some interesting data. Rob knows this already, but I'm doing a massive research project at Football Guys, and it's looking at teams since 2010 that have either multiple first round picks in a first round draft or zero. And then what happens to that team over 3 years? And then also how they were prior to that year. So we have a baseline, and it's interesting because teams that have multiple first round picks, if you just look at it from year prior to having that and 3 years later, 72.7% increased in terms of wins. And only 24% got worse. Like there's a study of this, and then it's actually every team that had, the majority of teams got worse when they had zero. And then here's the thing: is again, I see paths like you guys are talking about. I don't see the extremes. I'm more in this middle area. I see paths for success with both areas, Fields or Caleb, and you say any rookie quarterback if you want. There has to be a price point where you're like, yep, like that makes way more sense. And I'll roll with Fields or, Bajent crazy, whatever, supporters, however you want to word it. Like there has to be a path where you're like, hey, you know what? We can do this because we saw Baker succeed on his third team. We saw Goff succeed on his second team. We just saw Purdy succeed. We saw Jalen Hurts succeed once he got surrounded. Like if you're telling me, again, you could get 4 first round picks on draft day, potentially. You're telling me if you have multiple first round picks 4 years in a row and more, maybe, who knows what the offer could be? It could be crazy. You're not like, hey, that could be a good, like team build. Like I could put first round pick at center and at safety and at like there's at some point you're like, oh, okay. But I think some people are just so focused, like, you know what, Caleb Williams, he's going to be Patrick Mahomes. That's the only way to win. There's so many ways to win in this game that it depends on what the Godfather offer would be.
Right.
Well, the follow-up then, before we go to Rob, is what is your like entry point? Like where does the conversation start? So all these teams are sending in offers. Like, what are you like, okay, you got me interested. You know what I mean? Compared to, no, I'm not doing that. For you,
is that for Nick?
Yeah, sorry, for Nick. Where's your starting point on the trade offers?
How far down do you have to go?
There's a lot of variables.
That's up to. How about this? How many firsts have to come back, or first plus premium player like DJ Moore? I kind of equate those. Like when do the conversations start?
To me, I would. I loved how Poles was almost going to be like just amazing, like how we would be in Madden. We're like last year, be like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna go from 1 to 2 and then 2 to 9. Like I was like, that's my GM, like that would be ideal for me. You flip with Washington, and even Schefter said the starting point is 2 1s. I would love for him to do that and then do something again and just get a haul. To me, I think you have to get at least like the equivalent of 4 1s, which that could be 3 1s and then a bunch of day 2s or some players, something like that to even, I think, get off of the number 1 pick.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Before, and Rob, what do you have to say?
So, look, I'm a Bears content creator. I'm not a GM. So because of that, my, I guess, opinion gets really swayed here by what I would end up having to deal with, right? And to me, at the end of the day, picking a quarterback at number 1 is the only way that I can be certain that that was the quarterback the Bears had highest on their board. If they at any point trade down from number 1, no matter what happens, every single quarterback taken before the quarterback that the Bears take will be compared to whoever is currently starting for the Bears. And if they stick with Justin Fields, every quarterback will be compared to Justin Fields and the ones from last year, more than likely at that stage. And people will say, okay, so Ryan Poles doesn't like CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, Caleb Williams, Drake May, or Jaden Daniels, huh? Well, let's see if Fields is better than all 6 of them. And it'll be completely unfair. And honestly, it'll get pretty insufferable. So for me, it's going to take Washington giving me not just number 2, but not just number 1 next year, probably the number 1 after that. I would need Washington to make me a franchise sinking offer to get Ryan Poles off number 1 if Ryan Poles wants a quarterback. And I don't care if that quarterback is Bo Nix. Like, I don't care if I agree with him. There's part of me that's just begging the Chicago Bears, who I've never seen have this opportunity in my life, to take the quarterback that they like the most if they decide that moving on from Justin Fields is the most important or is their best option forward. Realistically, if you could get 2 this year, 33, the number 1 next year, the number 2 that the year after that, and maybe one more piece of sweetener, you got yourself a hell of a conversation. Like, I mean, I think
Rob, you said you're not a GM. It sounds like you the GM that I'd like to have. You know what I mean? Like you have the number 1 fantasy pick, and the number 2 guy's like, hey, I'm from that guy's. You know, that's my team. You know, I want Josh Allen. Like,
that's the guy who says, I remember I was in a fantasy draft 4 years ago, Nick, where somebody was like, Kirk Cousins is about to be the MVP. Like, I'll trade you anything for the number 1 pick, and I was like, anything?
Yeah.
I mean, I think Drake May gets underrated in these conversations. Like, what is it? 670.
Yeah.
670 just put out a graphic about a QB town hall, and it's got Caleb and Justin on it. And corny as it is, it's like, if you could get a future first, and especially if you got some extra second rounders, and you get a guy that his worst trait is that he's too much like Justin Herbert in the bad ways, just as much as the good ways. Mm-hmm. Oh no, that's just so bad. Mm-hmm. And so I think
one of the guys at 670 bought a Caleb Williams jersey too. So I'm like, man, would that not be the Bears have a chance to do one of the funniest things and be like, you know what? We are going to do what Rob just said. We're going to get, compensated for it. And Drake May was actually our number 1 guy. So that would be bizarre.
And then I just have to sit here because that may work. That may work, and it may get them the better team. Very well could. But then I have to sit there and hope that Caleb Williams doesn't play like Jesus in cleats.
You're right.
Because if May is good and Caleb is great in Washington, and God forbid Justin's really good too, like, we just have to wear it. And it doesn't matter that the plan may work. It's the world of a content creator. It's a little different.
Yeah. And Rob, I want to pivot back to Flus here for a moment. But before I do,
thank you.
That's you said it perfectly about being wrong here. Because CJ Stroud, I think you get a pass. Poles gets a pass. Now, maybe not on Twitter, but around the league, probably is going to be like, oh, I would have kept Justin too. But if he does not take Caleb here, could he realistically say, everything goes to shit next year? You keep Justin, and it's just terrible. You win 6, 7 games, 8 games maybe, but it's like Caleb does play at extremely high level. Drake May, same thing. Is he not gone? So if you take, I think we talked about it last pod, that's where it's like almost, I love you, Justin. I really think there could be something, but I have to go with Caleb because that kind of extends his job for a couple more years. And that's kind of like something I think we talked about with Cap last week. It's like, that's a very real, like, he's a human being, it's his job. So for me, do you think that plays? Obviously, you think that plays a role, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you look at Ryan Pace, guys, for as much as we talk about Ryan Pace as a GM,
Got
love
it
him or
wrong.
hate him, the guy was a master of keeping his job. You go back and you look at the tail of the tape. He didn't draft a quarterback in year 1. He didn't draft a quarterback in year 2. He waited until year 3. Inexplicably didn't fire John Fox so that he could hire another head coach the year after that and extend that timeline that little bit further. Like, he continued to make whatever move he needed to do so that the ownership could reasonably say, if things went south, oh, well, we weren't expecting anything from this because of all this. And I can't help but think, not that it should drive decision making, that kind of, I mean, Dave, to your point, Fields has to make the playoffs. If Fields stays next year, you have to make the playoffs. It doesn't matter if 3 out of 5 of your starting linemen are lost for the season by week 4. It doesn't really matter if 6 of your defensive stars go down for serious time. It doesn't matter if players just regress. Like, at that point, you made your bed. You have to sleep in it. You draft Caleb Williams. I mean, God, he throws for 300 yards 3 times. Okay, you pretty much just got another 2 years extension. I mean, and you're good through 2026. And it's a brutal truth within the industry. But in this case, especially if you're a fan of Justin Fields in the chat, what the Bears need, in your opinion, and what Ryan Poles might need as the GM might not be in total alignment. But we see this all the time. Look at Jacksonville. Tell me that's not Trent Baalke fighting for his life at the expense of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Like, it happens all over the place. Joe Douglas, another one, fighting for his life in New York Jets. We'll probably see the same from Joe Shane, don't you think? So it's a weird league driven by GMs that are stoic and they're sticking to their price point until that seat gets warm, and suddenly they're willing to open the wallet up and make a decision that might extend the timeline.
But I'm going to disagree with you on this one. I don't think it matters. I think so. I mean, you think Ryan Poles is only making decisions based on keeping his job? He's not a politician. He's not like, in the end of year 3, I'm campaigning for years 5, 6, and 7. I think he's like, what's the best for the Bears? He stripped it down. He could have kept it together to try to get some wins right away. And look, I'm a good GM. He's like, you know what? I'm going to be patient through this whole process. And I'm going to do what I think is the best path. And that's the thing, is like, if he thinks the best path is having 8 first-round picks in the next 4 drafts, who am I to say he has a short-term view on this? Or in the owners and Kevin Warner, like, you know what? That's a bad idea to have a ton of first-round picks, because as I showed, I mean, listen, I'm a guy with a notebook. You don't think they have people that can do these studies and be like, hey, you know what? This shows that you're going to make the playoffs. I mean, which I have that data as well. That, and so to me, I don't think Poles is like, listen, if I make this move, I get 2 more years of my family in the Chicago area. And if I don't, and everything goes terrible, I get fired. I think he wants to build the Bears as a juggernaut. And I think you can do that with a rookie quarterback, and you can do that with a bounty Godfather offer of picks.
So I do too. And Sashi Brown probably thought the same thing. Yep. But Sashi Brown didn't win more than 1 game in 2 years and ultimately lost his job. I mean, Nick, I think
this isn't that team though. Come on, Rob.
Of course it's not. Of course it's not. It's all to just say that when you're actually sitting in when you're sitting in a performance review with the owner and he says, you're really sure you're going to trade this thing? You're sure? Like, are you stern? Are you made of stern enough stuff to make that decision? Honestly, the more we talk about it, Nick, the more I'm like, well, I hope he is. If that's what Poles believes, then I hope he's willing to make the hard choice and live with whatever the consequence is. But at the end of the day, I think he's just going to do whatever he thinks is best for the Bears. I mean, you and I've talked about it on the podcast, Nick. I don't think the Bears could be in better hands, at least based on what the GMs that we've seen in Chicago recently. And at the end of the day, I trust him enough to turn the reins over to him and be like, make whatever decision you think is best.
I think you're both right. I think, Rob, you're wrong right now, but let me back it up.
No,
GM
I take that.
Is weird. Yeah, I'll take that too. Wrong right now. I'm wrong right now a lot of times. So welcome to the club. But the GM position is weird in the NFL because it's not like other positions where, like, once you're fired, you get, like, coaches get fired and they move to different teams all the
Right.
time. The same role. Some of them get bumped up. You know what I mean? They may go down for 1 year, get bumped up. No, GMs typically, once you're done with GM, you may go like how Ryan Pace was. You go into, still you stay within that organization. You don't get another GM role. It doesn't happen very often. So I agree, Rob, that they are fighting. At some point, they get desperate. We literally saw it with Ryan Pace and Nagy, right? That's why they drafted Fields. I don't think, though, I probably have to favor with Nick here. I don't think Poles is there yet.
Not yet.
But at some point, I 100% agree. We'll start to see some decisions, right? And it may, hopefully this is like years down the road,
Never
like
seen
10
this.
years, 15.
Ever.
Yeah, right. Hopefully we don't, right? But knowing the Bears, it might happen sooner than what we expect. There will be a point where you'll start to see that, the desperate moves. You're like, really? What doesn't really make sense here. I do feel, though, same with kind of Flus. I think they're connected together, and they both know, hey, we have time. We have time. We have not seen with any of the moves that they've made so far that we're like, wow, that was really like outrageous, or I'd say extreme, right? There hasn't been like that Khalil Mack trade. We were like, what? Like, as much as we loved it, right? You're like, what the fuck, right? We haven't seen that type of play yet. And so I think we're more in the Nick camp for now, but hopefully we never get to your camp, Rob. But this team has been on your camp for most of my life, just making wild moves after wild moves after wild moves.
Absolutely. So before I ask my question, I've been kind of pushing this off, suspense here, but I want to bring it back real quick. The chat's been kind of fired up a little bit. Rob kind of wanted to address it. Matt Eberflus, Rob, go ahead and take the stage.
So if there's one thing that I do think is funky whenever we talk about Matt Eberflus, you talk to most Bears fans, they hate him, right? And I completely get that. I'm not about to make the case that you have to love Matt Eberflus, but there's not really a world where Matt Eberflus gets fired at the end of next year. I don't care who's playing quarterback, and that is a good thing. I mean, if Justin Fields goes off next year, as would be expected of anybody that wants to keep Justin Fields, you're not firing Matt Eberflus. If the rookie shows any promise next year, especially if the defense still is, we're talking top half. The bar's pretty low, guys. Then Matt Eberflus keeps his job. You're going to need to lose probably 10, 11 games. More than likely, you're going to need to lose at least 11 games to get Flus fired at the end of next year. And if the Bears lose 11 games under literally any circumstance, we have not quite hit Armageddon, but we're at what, DEFCON 4? Would you say? Like, it's bad out there. And so I can't help but think that, look, I hate to be the guy who says we should rally around, but you have to give Flus a chance here. The expectation and hope has to be that Matt Eberflus is still coaching the Bears in 2027. Because if he isn't coaching the Bears in 2027, something went wrong somewhere with Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus's team build. And I don't like him that much either, guys. But that's where we stand right now, where there are Seahawks fans that could not stand having Pete Carroll as their head coach. There are Buffalo fans that could not stand having Sean McDermott as their head coach. Nick, there were Pittsburgh fans that have been crying and like yelling for a change at head coach for
Rob,
as time. Yeah,
Rob, I just heard they should fire Kyle Shanahan. Did you guys hear that? The Super Bowl, all the mistakes, they got to get rid of that guy.
Wild, bro.
And so I look at this like I really do get that we don't like the guy that some people call Matt Eberflus, right? I think he's dorky too at times, and especially a terrible run with the media in September and October that made him look nigh on incompetent. But you got to hope that the core pieces they put in place at the end of this offseason are still there in 3 years. We hope that in 2028, pretty much all the major players are still around, because if they aren't, we've been on the roller coaster and I want off. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, definitely went off. And that's my thing. Like, we're Bears fans. I don't care who is doing what if we're winning. Like, if the team is good, I don't care if Flus was the last guy. We're winning. Same with the quarterback, right? Caleb, Bo Nix, right? Justin Fields. If they are winning games, I could care less, right? The problem is that this organization has not won games
Yes.
in so long. So people are picking certain narratives and stories that they're selling themselves on, saying, hey, this is the way we're gonna win. In reality, none of us know, right? We don't. There's some names that we enjoy, right? And that kind of makes sense. Like, we wouldn't be mad about Harbaugh because he won a lot of games. But I think the point is like, let's take a step back. We made progress from last year to this year. Hopefully we can see some more progress, right, in different areas. It may not always be the wins, but like overall, if we go, hey, this was a better year than last year, let's keep it moving. Instead of like player, coach, all this stuff, it's like we're going to go in. We already have. I know I have. We're going to go insane. If you guys aren't there yet, it is. I think that's just why it's so crazy right now, is because there's all these different narratives, and we're like in a desert with no water. And we think, oh, this is going to lead us to water. Yeah. This is going to lead us to water. And we're like, we have no idea. We're all looking at a mirage, you know?
Winning fixes everything. Like, to me, like, I don't care if the Bears threw for 100 yards a game. I wouldn't care as long as they won. I know there's some people that be like, well, that's not how you win in the NFL. Listen, you have to and they look at you have to get to Tom Brady and you have to throw this and then you have to have these certain pieces. And that's how you win. No, I just want to win. I don't care what it looks like. I'm with you. I don't care if they have 10 offensive linemen and Fields is there and he's just now a running back. I don't care. I just want to win.
I love it. I think I'm ready for free agency. I'm ready for March, to be honest. I bet you guys are as well. But Rob, Nick, before we let you out of here, first of all, thank you for hopping on. I know Rob is going to have a all 22 stream coming up. So as soon as this is over, I think he's going to have it up and running. So go ahead and check him out over, I think it's just Robert Schmitz, right?
It's just I think it's Robert Schmitz NFL. We're going to be going through as much draft film as I'm allowed to show in about 3 hours. So if you haven't watched Roma Dunze, Dallas Turner, Malik Neighbors, basically anybody that I can think of top of mind. And if you have somebody that I want to, or that I should watch, we'll pull their tape and get to it. And I want to basically kind of like you're getting at, Dave, I'll say what the part that we're all thinking. Eventually you got to think that the Bears either are or aren't going to make a move at quarterback, and it's almost a matter of just waiting and seeing at this point. Because the conversation, man, can we say that the discourse has been discoursed and almost just leave it at that in some of this case? Because it's like whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and I'm not trying to be all c'est la vie about it. It's more like whatever they do is a good thing. It will make the Bears better, we hope. But these conversations are getting more and more volatile by the day. Let's talk about number 9. Let's talk about the other thing.
Right.
Absolutely. I think it is. Honestly, the big guys like Ian and Adam Schefter, every day we're getting an update. And I'm like, it's almost like the same update, maybe just a little bit different, or they're spinning it a little bit. Clicks. Yeah, you're right, Nick. But speaking of clicks, I want to talk about Caleb Williams real quick. There's a lot of narratives about him. Rob, Nick, I want to know the truth about Caleb Williams from your eyes, both Nick and Rob, because first of all, I talked about it before you got on, Rob. You're very factual. You take a lot of emotion out of it. First of all, your threads on Twitter, Robert Schmitz.
They're too long.
No, they're amazing, man. Now, sometimes I will be honest. Sometimes I'll like it, bookmark it to read later because I can't get to it. So I'll be honest there. But I love the threads. I literally have a bookmark folder that says "read later." Half of them are going to be Rob. I'm not going to lie. Some are articles, but I do. I get to them and it'll be 9 at 9. I'm like, let me see what Rob's talking about.
Starts as one tweet. I promise.
Wild.
It's just
don't change.
It's impressive.
Do not change. I enjoy it. I know a lot of other people do as well, but I want to know what is the truth about Caleb Williams, as far as just a prospect. I'm not going to go into character because I think that's outlandish. We're not going to be able to sit down with this guy, but from all things that we hear about him is he's a good person. He's a great guy, and he's obviously a great quarterback. So, but what is the truth behind him as a prospect, Rob?
I need to start because Nick is air raid certified, and I'm about to make a bunch of claims about the air raid that I have only really recently thought of, that I then want to turn over to Nick because he actually knows how the air raid works and has been schooled in it and can tell me. But so when I watch Caleb Williams, I see somebody who's got just all of the throwing ability that you could ask for. I mean, it doesn't help anything that his release is, as everybody talks about Mahomes, his release is as close to Aaron Rodgers as I've seen in a long time. And because of Stockholm syndrome, that's one of my favorite quarterbacks ever. There's nothing I can do about it. The Bears lost way too many games to him being that dude. I didn't see Favre. That was effectively the best quarterback that I ever watched growing up because the Bears just didn't play the Patriots all that often, right? But so watching Caleb Williams, I see really, really wild pocket footwork and a player that at the end of the day, look, I could talk about all the different things he does well, but the truth is he's just really unique. And the offense he plays in is very college. And while there are structural answers, I mean, as far as I understand, Nick, the air raid is very, okay, so pre-snap, they're showing you this. You can check into that if you want to. You're going to have this array of options in front of you. Take them. And if you don't like it, just go out there and be a football player. And that there's a reason that you don't really run air raid in the NFL because defenses are just a little too good. They can squeeze your margins. And
Cliff Kingsbury.
Right. I guess so. We saw how well that worked, didn't we?
Mhm.
But within that, it's like you basically see Caleb right now playing a style of football that might help him when plays break down in the NFL, but it's not NFL ball, conventionally speaking. So there's definitely going to be some translation. As for as much as people talk about how Caleb may hit the ground running, maybe, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are going to be some real growing pains. But Caleb's arm elasticity, his ability to generate velocity from literally any throwing angle he wants to. If he's running backwards, he can throw it 40 yards down the field. He's running sideways, he can fire the ball as if he's standing still. The other thing about Caleb that I think is well worth talking about, and this is as good as it is bad, is that he believes in his own ability to throw off platform to such a degree that he will attempt nearly impossible throws as if they're normal. Sometimes that can get him in trouble, but I can't help looking at Caleb and see, okay, it's like watching a corner that's too physical, where you say to yourself, we can reel that physicality in and end up with a Tyreek Stevenson. Whereas somebody who isn't physical enough, it's harder to teach it. Caleb has all the aggression. Caleb has the aggressive attitude down the field. He's got all of the arm talent that you could want, can push the ball seemingly wherever and whenever he wants to, attacks the middle, attacks the sidelines, attacks the deep areas, is one of the only quarterbacks that PFF, if you care about PFF, has graded as an 80 or better in the short game in all 3 years of his career. Nick, I don't know if you knew that. Not even Burrow. Like Caleb is the only quarterback to achieve an entire career of 80 or better PFF short yard grade. Not that matters.
Wow.
You look at Caleb Williams, I think, and you see a quarterback prospect that I find incredibly exciting, but to pretend that there's not bust potential because of how somewhat it's right on the line between confident, arrogant, and reckless. He is when it comes to his ability to extend plays. You watch Mahomes, I think that Caleb will be able to pull off some stuff like that. But I also think that there's going to be some disasters early in his career. And that's where I would hope the defense can step in. And on the games where Caleb turns it over 3 times, go get two back and keep it close. Nick, what do you see? Is that a good depiction of the air raid?
Well, yeah, because there's a lot of option routes and you have to be on the same page with your guys. And you know what's ironic is Drake May also played in the air raid, you know, with Phil Longo. And so people and Drake May, honestly, y'all, he's way more similar to Caleb than he is different. And I think people really want to separate them as two different, both athletic, both try to make probably too many plays. Both are uber talented, athletic. There's a lot of similarities there, in my opinion. But there is with the air raid because there's not as many checkdowns and there's a lot of you trusting your receiver to run to green grass, to read coverage, and you have to be on the same page all the time. And USC's offensive line was so bad that I think sometimes it was like, all right, we're going to go recess, after about 2 seconds here. And I agree with a lot of what you said, Rob. I mean, a way to describe it is think of the most talented golfer that whenever they're in any kind of trouble, they just hit the hero shot. And sometimes it's awesome, but then also he had the most fumbles, I think, of any quarterback. He'll take
33.
He'll take some really bad sacks. I mean, we saw the Notre Dame game. I was there. I saw it live. I mean, there was a lot of some bad plays, but he's just really, really good. And the thing that you wonder, I described this on our pod. He's like an annoying guy in the pocket where like he's just always just far enough away to not get the sack and to get the ball off. And like he's just really like annoying the defenses, I feel like, which is such a skill. That reminds me of Rodgers, where like you just couldn't sack him. He bought so much time to get receivers open, but that was in college. They're going to be bigger, faster, stronger in the NFL. And will they still be able to get away with that? And you think, well, yeah, of course he will. Zach Wilson got away with a lot of that stuff in college, and it was a disaster in the NFL. I'm not saying he's obviously a way better prospect, but that was a concern because you're like, man, Zach Wilson's this big playmaker, and it was a disaster. And so, I think he's probably a blend between like a Rodgers and Russell Wilson is kind of where I have him. Some people say Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is way faster than Caleb Williams, y'all. And he doesn't have a cannon for an arm, and people hear that and they're like, what? He's got a great arm. Cannon. Okay. Cannon. Okay. And there's good arms. And this is where he's at. I'm not saying he's a bad arm, but Drake May has a much stronger arm, and that's throwing on a line, even off his back foot. Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, these guys have cannons. Okay. He's not going to be in that category, and that's fine. You don't actually need that in the NFL. We just saw Jared Goff and Purdy and tons of quarterbacks be successful because of this playmaking ability. And Rob was saying this. One of the things that I appreciate the most outside of his pocket presence, which is, I think, just elite, is the way he can throw accurately. Like he'll be running full speed and just like throw from some weird, like torqued position. And it's right where you want it to be. I'm like, oh my gosh, how does he do this stuff again and again and again? And I think one of the important parts of the Notre Dame game that I saw was after they were down. After he made a bunch of mistakes, he still led them down for touchdown drives. And that's a mental thing, which I really, really enjoy as a quarterback kind of coach. That's my main position. He has really good footwork in the pocket when he doesn't move off platform. He's always got a good base and ready to throw. That's important. So that's something like Justin struggles with a bit. When you have that pressure, he moves slightly to still continue to throw in his eyes downfield. That's something Justin struggles with a little bit. So he's almost kind of the opposite of what Justin is in a lot of aspects. But I think he's a really good prospect, but I don't think he's flawless. And I don't think I'll ever say generational out of my mouth for any prospect. But I think he is very good. But again, there is an area where he could be a middle of the tier quarterback. I mean, that's a possible too.
And that's
I think
thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was gonna say what's also very important, which we talked about earlier, but I just want to double down on it, is there's a lot of great prospects, right? We've seen a lot of great prospects, even that we've drafted, but it's about where they get drafted to. That organization, that team, how they're set up, who's running it from the top down. I will say, I think this is the first time where we're in a position to draft a quarterback where I confidently can say, I don't feel like we're going to fuck it up tremendously. You know what I mean? It may not be we got the right guy, but I'm not like, oh my God, we are going to butcher this to shit, right? It's like, you know what? I trust Poles. You know, I kind of trust Flus. Oh, we got Shane Waldron. Like, can we agree, like, on paper again? It's all on paper. Like, the hirings that we did this offseason, it felt like, oh, I like that. Yeah, no, that kind of makes sense. Like, for the first time, you're like, wow, there's nothing that I can complain about, really. Like, I understand the direction they're going. So what's important is not only that this is a very talented prospect, or even like Drake May or whoever, there's a lot of talented prospects, is that I think if they come here, we're actually going to be able to help set them up for success. And I think people kind of forget that about Mahomes. Mahomes wasn't obviously the best prospect in college. That's why he got drafted third on the list. And most people had him, fourth or fifth, right? As low as as high as 3 and as low as 5 or 6. Some people had him draft in the second round, which is wild, right? And I know I'm going on a tangent here, but Merrill Hodge, the video that came out where he's like, "Hey, Caleb's a bust." He projected Mahomes to go in the second round. So just want to put that out there. But my point is that he went into a very favorable situation, right? Great coach, weapons all around, right? Got to learn, and then boom, right? We know what Mahomes has done. So you have the talent plus the environment. For us, it's not the exact, like we don't have an Andy Reid, right? We don't have a Travis Kelce, but we do have a DJ Moore. We do have at least a head coach that's been here for 3 years now, a decent, I would say at least above average GM. So if he comes in here, there is some I guess like a solid ground and a foundation that if if it doesn't work out, it might be more on him than for the first time we're like, yeah, this organization just sucks, right? So
for the love of me though, Ficky, for the love of me, can we not have Sam Musfer, Lucas Patrick at center? Like that's like I think Patrick would struggle with that. I think anyone would struggle with that. It's like, we like in the Super Bowl when that tackle just didn't block Chris Jones. It's like, that is not good. No one does good with that.
And see, look, maybe I'm being a little too on the nose, right? But one thing that I do think is kind of funky about if the Bears do draft Caleb Williams, this really applies to Caleb way more than it applies to Drake. So Caleb has a tendency to hold on to the football. Everybody knows that, right? And the Bears just started a quarterback that led the league in time to throw, for better or for worse. We're just going to leave that there. So you could argue, what offensive line is better set up to block for Caleb Williams than the Bears offensive line?
They've been doing it.
Guys like Braxton, guys like Darnell, guys like Tevin and Nate and whoever the center is, they're like, oh, well, it's a little different, but it's kind of the same. And so, I mean, I think a huge piece of this, like what would Caleb bring the Bears immediately? I think it's going to be the stuff that happens when the plays break down. There's going to be some disasters. I think there are going to be some big hitters. What's really going to make the difference is going to be how quickly can Shane Waldron get Caleb to play within structure. You can't really live in the NFL without playing within structure to some degree. And I don't think it's going to be impossible for Caleb to do so. I mean, the air raid just has different rules than what you do in the NFL. I don't think Caleb is incapable of hitting the back of his drop and just letting a throw go. It's just, we haven't seen it. We can't say we know because we don't. We can just say maybe, right? But I tend to think that this whole thing is going to be, we should make this fun. I keep coming back to like, this is sports. We should make this fun instead of making it so gravely serious. If whoever the rookie is, if it's Jaden Daniels, if it's Drake May, if it's Caleb Williams, if it's Justin Fields, all they have to do, throw for 226 yards a game for 17 games, and they will break Aaron Kramer's record.
Let's go.
Let's just do it.
Then you build the statue.
Facts. It's crazy though. We're in such a favorable situation, win-win, like with all these routes. And if you were just to go on Twitter, you would think like we're in like the worst situation born to man. But it's like, this is a fun time. We got cap space. We got 2 top 10 picks. Like there's going to be exciting news. I just wish people felt like how they felt last year, because last year's offseason we were like, ooh, what's this trade going to be? You know what I mean? Like people were really excited about that. Because no matter what, there's going to trade that's going to happen, whether it's a trade for Fields or you're going to trade the first, right? So I think we should kind of, like you said, we got to make this fun. It's sports. We're watching
for me,
play ball. So.
I feel thankful because, I mean, just a few years ago, it was Mitchell Trubisky versus Nick Foles in a quarterback competition at training camp. Like, like Rob said, this is supposed to be fun. I've been trying to tune out the negativity on Twitter by just like not giving any attention for the most part, which has kind of worked sanity wise. But I want to jump to my last question, Rob, Nick, and then we'll get you out of here. What is the truth about Justin Fields? And the reason I ask this is because for me and a lot of other people, and I really like Caleb. I really do. I like Fields in some things. But for me, tell me why you want to move on from him. Tell me why you just don't believe he's going to get to where I guess some fans, some analysts even, and players think he may be able to get to as far as maybe a top 10, top 15 quarterback. So for me, Rob, I've seen some tweets about you really went in depth about why you're not sold. This is year 3 now, So for me, what is the truth about Justin Fields in his game right now? What scares you about maybe sticking with him? And this goes for you too, Nick. And so whoever wants to go first here, I kind of flip a coin here.
I can. I mean, so first things first, I want to point out that the hardest thing that I find to watch about Justin Fields is that I swear I'm watching a player whose play style is at war with what's good for him. right? This is totally just my opinion. I need to preface that with this, where if we had to pick quarterbacks, if we were on recess style, Nick, and 32 teams, we're going to pick 32 quarterbacks to win one game. Justin Fields is a lot higher on my list than if he needs to win it within a 17-game season that ends in a 3 to 4 game playoff run, because I think Justin Fields' rushing ability opens all kinds of seams and creases that other quarterbacks can't open up. But within any quarterback rushing attack is the implicit understanding you will eventually take a shot you did not expect. We saw that all throughout this last year, where 3 runs would go well, and on the 4th one, whether it was Braxton Jones, Nate Davis, I don't know, Darnell Wright, somebody would just blow the pass blocking or they would blow the blocking concept, and Fields would then, I still remember that Vikings game where somebody grabbed him, pulled him down, but not all the way down, and somebody else ran over and put a shoulder in his face, and suddenly I had to watch the quarterback take a hit that other quarterbacks just aren't taking right now. Doesn't help anything that he's not getting any flags, which is ridiculous, but let's set that aside, right? Why did the Bears try to take, in that first couple weeks of the season, Justin Fields and make him a pocket passer? It's because clearly this same question bothers them on how do we get Fields into an offense where we aren't going to get him hurt. And I don't know the answer yet. I have some ideas on things that you would try. The hope would be that Marvin Harrison Jr. would help you have 2 receivers that get open as if they're at Ohio State, and you might be able to build an offense that takes a little bit of the reading pressure off of the quarterback. But this is the NFL. It's just not that easy. And at the end of the day, if tight windows and defenders being in the neighborhood of throwing windows and zone coverage are all it takes for the offense to stall out. And did we score 9 points? Was it 9 points in the last game of the season against the Packers?
Yeah.
I think so. It wasn't a lot.
It wasn't a lot.
Was it
That's for
17-9?
sure.
Why are we going back there?
It's
Rob, come on, man.
It's purely.
I tried to
Nick,
delete that from the brain.
Come on, bro.
Totally. I'm more just looking at this from the top end of, I feel like the longer I watch Justin, the lower his ceiling is getting. Not that it can't be upper table. Not that it can't be above average. I think in 2 to 3 years, Justin could easily have a Geno Smith-like resurgence. It's just that the timeline is starting to get wonky within Chicago right now, and they have the first overall pick. Like, I really believe that Justin is as much a victim of circumstances as he is anything else. I don't think we're having this conversation if Carolina returns the 6th overall pick and you've got 6 and 9. Nice. At that point, I think at least we pitch the idea of moving on from Fields, but then you end up saying, Nick, I bet you'd agree with this. Well, isn't the ceiling of Jaden Daniels Justin Fields? So what are we doing here? Like, we're really going to spend that kind of capital on J.J. McCarthy? Like, let's just build around Fields and see where this goes. That's what we'd say. It's not the situation in front of us. And so I think that there are times here, Nick, Dave, Ficky, where people make this, Justin sucks. And that's not true. Justin is a starting quarterback in the NFL. The Bears just got an opportunity that a lot of teams wish they had. Like, if you pulled the league right now, a lot of them would take this exact problem. And
I was
going
to say, there's a reason that Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter said premium pick for Justin Fields. And they mentioned second is the starting point. So that lets you know that this is first of all, the teams are desperate for quarterbacks. I don't know if you've watched NFL games this year, but there's a lot of boo-boo quarterback play, like a lot. So Fields is easily top 18, probably, like quarterback. And with some teams, you think of like the Steelers, where they have everything else but the quarterback, they would easily take him. We talk about the Falcons, which I think would be a perfect situation going back home. Weapons on the offense, defense was top 10. They just had they had 2 bad quarterbacks, So, Fields is definitely good enough to win games and to start. And like you said, if we didn't have the first overall pick, this wouldn't be a discussion at all. Maybe, not 2, but like you said, if we weren't in competition for Drake or Caleb, this probably wouldn't be a conversation at all.
Yeah. Nick, what are your thoughts on it?
Well,
Justin?
First off, like, thanks, Lovey. I mean, this is Lovey made this problem happen. You know what I mean? Like you talk about any statue. I mean, I still love that guy from when he was head coach, but he did that. Like, that's the problem. It's like, it's just too good of a thing to have happen again. to me overall, I think you have to how I look at prospects from even because I mean I scout guys out of high school and I'm in college. Like when you have 2 years of elite data, it's better than 1 year of elite data, right? And then you can do that for like very good years and good years. And then you have a guy that's been hurt a couple of years. And then like Marshawn Lloyd, right? Marshawn Lloyd, running back, he was at South Carolina, showed some promise, got hurt, okay year, transfers to USC, has a solid season out there. He's on people's radar, gets hurt again. But you're like, okay, well, we saw some of it, right? That's kind of where I feel like Fields is. I mean, if there's anybody out there that thinks that he had a fair shake in Chicago and was set up for success, I think you're lying to yourself, because I don't think anyone sees that with the coaches that were out there, the schemes, I mean, we don't even talk about his thumb, y'all. He hurt his thumb and played the last half of the year with a thumb on his throwing hand that was messed up. You can't tell me that didn't affect him at all. And so, and then we talked about center. I mean, and then people are like, well, now you're just making excuses. I am. And so I'm like, well, if you take those away, would he be way better? If we had a offensive coordinator that was even average, would it be okay? I don't know. But to me, the data points show he hasn't done it yet. And so we're getting further and further away. And I feel like he's lost some confidence because we saw him throw with more conviction, I feel like, at those 2 really good games in his rookie year than we saw in any of the other games. And so to me, we're just getting further and further away where I still could see it happening. But I feel like if you reset, it's a safer play. And this isn't talking about the package, right? That's a whole different conversation. But just talking about him, I think lost confidence, lost with what he's seen and trusting his eyes, not trusting his offensive line in the pocket. That's obviously an issue. We know. I think he got better this year. He definitely got better overall this year.
No doubt.
Throwing the ball into the pockets. I mean, getting them to jump off sides and throwing touchdowns, throwing the deep ball, as we know, trusting. I mean, the thing is like when I think of, okay, let's draft, if you trade down, whatever, Brock Bowers and Rome Odunze. To me, I'm like, okay, he's got 3 DJ Moores out there. He's like, yep, that guy's open. He just throws it with conviction. That's a different Justin. If you saw that all the time, it's a different conversation, but you don't. And so there's a little doubt. And when you add in some injuries too, some untimely fumbles, to me, I can see why the doubt's there enough to go with Caleb.
Wow.
It's
good stuff. It's good stuff. Well, Nick, Rob, we've kept you way too long. We just want to say, first of all, we appreciate it. Secondly, want to give you guys love. Your podcast, bear with us. Great. Do you guys have an off-season schedule? Do you guys want to talk about kind of what's going on for your show right now before we let you go?
Do we have an off-season schedule, Nick?
Go ahead, Rob.
So we were originally going to roll back to like 1 podcast a month or a week, but then we realized that 1 podcast a week doesn't grow a podcast. So 2 podcasts a week it is. And so
hold on,
love it,
Rob. You missed me. Okay, 1 time a week wasn't enough, and you're like, hey man, I miss talking to you.
Honestly,
let's just
that's true.
Talk.
Because the big problem that we've had to really solve, I really mean this, chat. Nick and I we had like a 40 show streak, Dave, where we started saying, okay, this one's going to be an hour. And then it would be the longest one we had yet because we just can't stop talking about football. And so we're going to try to find a balance between, hey, let's talk about what the zeitgeist is. And also let's spice up discussion and talk about, I don't know, safeties. Like who's going to replace Eddie Jackson? What's that going to look like? More than just quarterback. And let things solve itself.
How long was our last show, Rob?
It was 37 minutes.
No one would believe that. That's the
wild.
shortest by a third. That was the shortest show we had.
My wife was going to leave me if it wasn't 37 minutes. So
there it is.
We had the right
life or death right there.
Exactly.
But I want to say, thank you guys for having us, man. I have so much fun talking ball with y'all. Seriously, and honestly, like this is just having fun with friends. And so I hope people get something out of this. But to me, this is just hang out with friends. So thanks for having us.
Absolutely. We'll have you on anytime.
That's what we wanted for. I think this is the second time we've done the crossover pod. I think people enjoy it. It really is. We're not trying everyone's opinion. Everyone is allowed to have their own opinion. I think it's just fun to hear people talk, even though I think some of us even have differences, and it's just a fun way to kind of to listen to. So also it's the dead of the off season. So I mean, A pod is a pod at this point. So, but,
hey man, a pod is a pod.
A pod is a pod. But you first of all, you can follow Nick Whalen on Twitter. Robert Schmitz. Is it NFL? Or just Robert Schmitz?
I think it's Robert K. Schmitz on Twitter.
Yeah, Robert
the K. Yeah.
It's Robert Schmitz was taken. Okay.
Yeah, we got to get that handle for you. But anyways, we appreciate you guys. Go ahead and check out Rob's stream. I think he's going over there right now. I'm not sure if Nick's joining, but it's been fun, boys. We'll have you on maybe after everything kind of calms down and there's a decision at the quarterback. So, but you guys have a great rest of your evening, and thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Yeah, that was great. I love having them on. That's always a good time.
I know. And we're about an hour 43. And it's not too bad, I guess.
That's not the worst. That is not the worst. We've definitely gone longer. 37 minutes is not 37 minutes. I don't know if we've ever done that short. We talk and I talk. Yeah. You talk. We love doing
my like I said, I had a I don't even know if I said it on the pod, but I went to the dentist today twice, got a cleaning and had to get a crown put on and everything. My jaw is killing me. So I don't know if you have any final thoughts, Fick, but maybe we can wrap this one up. Again, sorry we didn't show a lot of comments. I want to preface this.
Yeah.
We didn't want to kind of cut off Rob or Nick's face. So obviously we were a little bit more engaging when it comes to the chat. This episode with both of them on, we kind of just want to keep it between just have them on the screen. So, but if you enjoyed it, make sure to hit the like button before you go. Subscribe if you enjoyed the pod. Check out Rob and Nick as well over there. Bear with us. And we appreciate it. But Fick, what were you saying?
No, I was gonna say we do have some stuff on the way. I just want to preface there, just for our YouTube viewers and for our podcast listeners as well. I was showing a shirt, our BFR merch. So definitely working on some stuff on the background that will be available for you guys soon. I promise that. A lot of exciting stuff.
Let me see the shirt again. Show it again. That's clean, dude. I like that. It's the navy blue one.
Yes, sir.
That's the blue one.
So,
all right. Yeah. Like I said, it is going to be really fun. We got the draft coming up. Obviously, free agency's first. We are going to be kind of having a pod every week. I don't think we're going to do two a week like Rob and them, but
power to them.
We are going to do at least one a week. So we'll have another show, have a fun guest on as well. So before we go, Ficky, anything else, man?
Oh, you want to talk about we'll be on Friends Pod tomorrow too. So check us out.
Yes, let me pull it up here. That's a good one. I honestly forgot, but I'm hoping my mouth feels better. But I'll be there no matter what. So let me pull it up here.
Do all the talking. We can make that up.
No, I can throw it.
I'm sure you can. Your mouth is gonna feel much better by tomorrow. Hopefully.
Oh, God, dude, I hope so. I'm gonna play some pickup basketball on Thursday, so the men's league
playoffs, right? You got the playoffs, right?
Not yet. No, this is the last regular season game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Man, why can I not find this? Oh, here we go. So it is going to be, let's see here. So it's Steven. He hosts a podcast with DWC. It's a live stream on YouTube. So DeWindy City Productions on YouTube. We're going to be live with him at 7:00 tomorrow on their channel. So go ahead and, obviously if you're looking for more Bears talk, I'm not sure what we're going to talk about. Obviously, probably, obviously Bears related, but it's going to be fun.
Packers talk.
It's going to be fun. So if you want to check us out over there, if you're not tired of us yet, we'll be on there. Excited to kind of talk with those guys. They're great people. So again, we appreciate everyone that tuned in today. It's been a lively chat. I was able to look at it.
Oh my gosh,
I had a lot of people on here. A lot of people. Just a lot of love. So like I said, we're building community. We got some merch coming as well, as Ficky showed. And we'll be back next week. And then, of course, we'll be there tomorrow with DWC.
Oh, wait a second. I think we actually had another super chat from Tito that just came in. So I want to make sure we share that before we go out. Tito with the $2. He said, I thought something was wrong because it was so short. I'm not even sure. What is he referring to there? Do you know, Dave? No,
no idea.
My brain Tito melted.
Tito, I'm sorry we missed it. We were terrible with the chat today. When we have those guys on, we really just want to kind of get their thoughts on it and kind of have it flow like a conversation. So we love you guys. Apple, Spotify, love y'all too. This will be up here shortly on both those platforms. And then, Ficky. Anything else,
I'm
man?
good. No, we're good.
All right. Well, hey, we'll see you tomorrow if you join. If not, we'll be next week with another awesome guest. Probably aiming for Tuesday again. But we love you guys, and we'll be back next week.
Peace.